As a young person today, it's hard to understand environmental issues and navigate how to feel about them. That's why Earth Rangers, ER Teens, and Kids Help Phone's National Youth Council came together to create this special miniseries for The Big Melt.
Hi everyone, we have a really exciting episode planned for you guys today where we're going to be discussing how to face the future, youth perspectives, and planning for life in uncertain times. We're all youth here ourselves, and just to get us started with some introductions, my name is Letitia. I am super passionate about all things mental health, but also nutrition and wellness and sustainable agriculture related. So I'm really excited to talk about how all these different aspects of navigating young adulthood really does tie into planning for the future.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm very passionate about all things environmental, whether it's endangered animals or helping sustainable ideas enter the future.
Hi guys, my name is Ira. I am very passionate about preserving the environment and working towards more sustainable movements in the future.
Perfect. So now that you guys have kind of gotten a sense of who we are, before we officially kick off the episode, I'm just going to begin with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. We honor their long-standing connection to the land, waters, and all living beings. Their stewardship and respect for the environment offer invaluable wisdom, and we are committed to learning from this knowledge as we strive for a more sustainable and harmonious future. So, of course, beginning with that land acknowledgement, we are ready to delve into some of the topics. So, some questions that we have even posed for you that you could consider is how can you plan for the future, not only through your everyday personal choices, but even in the bigger picture of advocating for policy reform or leading initiatives? Claire or Ira, if either of you want to step in and kind of get our conversation going.
Yeah, so I'd really like to talk about sustainable shopping. A lot of people use shopping as a hobby instead of kind of just a way to get things that you need. So, a lot of clothes that are worn and then donated, often they don't stay in Canada. They're sent to other countries to then be burned in a landfill. So, especially like fast fashion places like Shein or Temu, it's really important when you're buying clothes to, instead of buy a lot of cheap quality clothes, to buy a couple that will last and that you'll actually use.
That is so important. And I'm so glad that you touched on like the culture of these Shein hauls. I think that's something that we saw all over social media and TikTok. And of course, that affects us on a personal level, our bank account, just having too much stuff. I know even for myself, it can feel so overwhelming to keep up with the trends. But of course, the larger impact of that is the profound impacts it has on the environment. But Ira, I know too, you kind of have a lot to say too about some other larger choices when it comes to habitat loss and everything too.
Yeah, definitely. Expanding on fast fashion, we know that the textile industry is a major source of chemical pollution. Harmful dyes, pesticides, and synthetic fibers end up in rivers and ecosystems, directly impacting aquatic life and damaging aquatic habitat. The fashion industry is also a major contributor to global carbon emissions, which accelerates global warming. This leads to melting polar ice, rising sea levels, and widespread threats to biodiversity.
Something that I know that all three of us were talking about is, of course, the world population is growing. And a question that often gets asked is, well, how are we going to feed this growing population? Claire, I know you're actually a vegetarian, so I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been vegetarian for about 4 years now. I started due to the fact that I learned that almost all of our meat that we eat, it comes from huge farms that have replaced natural forests and habitats. And then all the animals there produce a methane gas, which is even worse than carbon dioxide and increases climate change by a significant amount. So it was definitely harder to start, But there's so many like different recipes and ideas of how to eat vegetarian, but also just more sustainably in general. A lot of people have started to fall into the trap of eating like Beyond Meat, but those actually use more water and have more greenhouse gas emissions than eating actual meat itself. So if you're trying to eat more sustainably, try and go for foods that are more natural, like lentils, beans, chickpeas, something that hasn't been overly processed in factories. And that like makes just a huge difference on its own.
I love that you kind of talked about kind of going into those like whole foods and even considering the environmental impact on the food. Nowadays, it seems like everyone is commenting on what people should be eating, and it can seem really overwhelming and really complicated sometimes. So, I think sometimes the advice is really simple, just grounding yourself in those whole foods and making the choices that help you feel good and can also really benefit the environment. And even with that, with the carbon emissions too, it's really great to know that there's been strides and such a push to kind of create these technologies that address the carbon emissions, specifically from cattle. I think if folks want to learn more, the Dairy Farmers of Canada, they have like quite a few resources on their website too for how they're working to hit zero carbon emissions. So I think it's really great too that while people are planning their dinners, they're actually like influencing these larger systems and structures in so many ways that there's such a profound response.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, tying back to the beginning talk of like shopping, you can almost like turn that around. If you start going to your local farmers market, there are so many cool things or cool foods that you can try that are all made locally. Even if you want to continue to eat meat, just try and find foods that are produced and made more locally to you so that it doesn't have to travel as far.
I love that, Claire, just that if we won't like follow along with these trends, it won't have to happen.
Yeah. Aira, earlier you were talking about how you wanted to share about how the future may look like and how we could like conserve the earth. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of ways we could kind of work toward preserving our home because there is no plan B. But there's little things that we could do. So, for example, we could participate in trash cleanups, which I know that, especially me and Claire being in high school, we are like looking to get our volunteer hours, and you can easily participate in pickups such as that, or even organize one in your community, or even just like making connections and bringing some topics up to family and friends.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm glad you talked about how there is no plan B. This is our earth and this is kind of our only chance.
I love that. Sometimes it seems like there's so much dread out there about what's happening in the environment with climate change. So I just want to pause and take a moment to remind folks that eco-anxiety is something that young people may face. And as they're making the time to advocate, to make these sustainable changes and make these swaps to educate themselves, it's also important to recognize that this can be super tiring. And just kind of some advice that I have for that is to ground yourself in what changes you can make and what's sustainable for yourself. Because of course that will help the environment, but it is always important to take care of yourself. And I know something that we talked about a lot throughout this episode was social media. So one tip that I've tried to implement in my own life is following more like positive accounts that try to share like more positive climate news and celebrate the good things and the wins that are happening.
Letitia, I'm so glad you brought that up. I did a lot of research on eco-anxiety with some different counselors and psychologists in my city. And it is definitely a real thing. And there is so many kids and youth, teens who struggle with it. I really liked what you were saying about like grounding yourself, like taking a break from social media and stuff. Another also good thing is to just every night before you go to bed, write down something that you are going to do tomorrow that will make a difference, whether it's like taking a shorter shower or like eating plant-based dinner. Something just small, and it can really help to kind of ground yourself again, but also feel like there's still something you can do.
I like that. It's definitely important to reflect on yourself, especially because that's how we will move forward to, making our home a better place, not just for us, but just for everyone. And reflecting is definitely something that can help us improve in ourselves and our actions towards the environment.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to listen to the Big Melt podcast. We hope that you guys had a really fun time kind of listening in on the conversation with us, and we hope that you can get involved in the future too.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredelioQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.